So this video is about prototyping, generating prototypes or models, okay, in a design process. So what is prototyping? Well, it is effectively that, okay, making models or prototypes of the final product prior to it going into manufacture, okay. This is very useful for the designer, as you can, if you're making a quick sketch model, you can maybe draw from that model, you can test the model to kind of see how it performs under various different conditions, and if you produced a sort of a presentation model, you can also hand it around to potential clients or consumers and get their feedback as to how the product needs to change or be manipulated, okay. So you can obviously produce physical prototypes, or you can produce virtual ones using CAD software, okay. So a physical prototype has very many good qualities, okay, because ultimately you can handle it, you get that kind of tactile feel, you might get a sense of weight and proportion that maybe you don't get with a virtual model. But obviously there is a cost in terms of labour and in terms of materials as well, and obviously the skill of the labourers involved needs to be very high to make an accurate prototype, whereas a virtual prototype can be generated probably a little bit quicker by a skilled technician on a CAD program such as Autodesk Inventor, and it also has the ability to, you can save the prototype, you can communicate it quite easily around various different places, you can spin it and flip it as you would a physical prototype, okay. You can apply different colours and textures so it can be quickly and easily manipulated, whereas a physical prototype would obviously need to be made again by scratch, okay. And you can also test the project in virtual environments. So for example, if you produce the model of a Formula 1 car or a car of some sort, you could put it through a range of wind tunnel tests to test aerodynamics. If we go back to physical prototypes for just a brief period, okay, we can think about the sort of materials you might want to use for prototyping. Now, if we're producing quick prototypes, then we obviously want to use quite compliant and materials that are easy to manipulate, okay. So examples of this might be some papers and boards, okay, because it's quite easy to make paper models, card models, perhaps using corrugated card if we need a bit more rigidity, okay. Equally, sort of flat and easy to manipulate sort of plastics might also be used, okay. Now, if we're producing architectural models, for example, to simulate walls and buildings, okay, foam core board is used quite regularly, which is obviously 2 layers of paper or card on the outside of a foam layer to give structure and rigidity, and it also then allows you to quite easily joint parts together and use things like PVA glue, where you can quite easily assemble parts together in that way. Now, these would obviously produce quite nice sketch models. Another example of a compliant material that's used quite frequently is what you might call styrofoam or expanded polystyrene, and again this makes for very quick physical models. You can quite easily cut the styrene or styrofoam using a hot wire cutter, and it can produce a fairly good finish if sanded correctly, and produce a very good and quick feeling of form and proportion, okay. If we do want to start producing sort of non-working models to a higher standard of quality, we may then use more sort of engineered materials such as chemi-wood, gelutong, or even MDF to an extent, if we want to produce a much better surface finish that we then want to apply perhaps paints and finishes to. And if we was going to present this to the client, it would give a much better impression of how the product is meant to look and feel in a more sort of a physical sense and a more realistic sense, okay. Now, the other method, so we've talked about sort of virtually producing prototypes using CAD software. We've talked about producing physical prototypes in the sense of using materials, okay, and using manual tools, okay. But the only other sort of key area that's like recently developed is the idea of using CAM machines to produce prototypes, okay. So this is quite broadly termed as rapid prototyping, and it means just that. It means producing a prototype rapidly or at speed, because none of the time used in production or the skill of labour is required to produce a rapid prototyped product. All we need is a skilled CAD technician, and then if we send it through to a CAM prototyping machine such as a 3D printing machine or a stereolithography machine, then this will do the work for us.